I think King Kong Escapes suffers from having the wrong writer and the wrong director attached to it. As much as I love Ishiro Honda and Takashi Kimura, I think King Kong Escapes needed a more colorful, action-packed essence to it that we would have seen from Jun Fukuda and writer Shinichi Sekizawa. You can keep Ifukube's score, sure, I guess that's fine, even though I think Masaru Sato would have fitted a little bit more. Um, but the biggest problem with King Kong Escapes is that I just think it was made by the wrong people. And it makes perfect sense why Toho would have gone with Ishiro Honda to make that movie and Takashi Kimura. Because if you look at this time period at Toho, they had split basically the special effects crew in the special effects movies into two teams. You had the A team, which had the more expensive movie and tended to be the more serious movie, which would be helmed by Ishiro Honda, Eiji Tsuburaya, and usually had music by Akira Ifukube and a script by Takashi Kimura. And then you had the B team, which was Jun Fukuda, Sadamasa Arikawa as special effects, and usually Masaru Sato as, your music composer. And they would be off making their two different movies, and the B team would have the significantly smaller budget of the two. And thus, that's why we had, those two island movies. So it makes sense because not only was Rankin Bass, an American distribution company, pouring a lot of money into, or a decent amount of money into King Kong Escapes, but they were also importing an American actor. And Ishiro Honda had experience working with American actors. He had worked with Nick Adams and Russ Tamblyn. He can work with Rod Reeson, goddammit. And so it makes sense why they went with those people. From a logic standpoint, if you're looking at it from the point of view of... If you look at it from the point of view of the studio, which I can sit in their chair as somebody who has produced a lot of stuff and as a person who's continued to produce a lot of movies and get a lot of stuff released and stuff like that outside of my YouTube channel, yeah, I can understand the point of view of the studio. But from a viewer perspective, it makes far more sense for King Kong Escapes to be helmed by Shinichi Sekizawa, Jun Fukuda, Masaru Sato, Sadamasa Arikawa, to just unleash and make it a much funner movie, certainly a faster-paced movie, in the very least. I think that's what would have happened. The same thing happened in 1969 with Latitude Zero, by the way. Latitude Zero was given to Ishiro Honda mainly because he had experience directing Western actors, and this was an A-grade science fiction movie for Toho. However, if that was given instead to Jun Fukuda, I believe the movie would have been significantly better paced and significantly more action-packed than the Ishiro Honda one. Because if you just look at the Jun Fukuda Godzilla films, even Megalon, it has a car chase and stuff like that in it, and Megalon's definitely the weakest by far of his films. But they have a load of energy to them. While Ishiro Honda movies tended to have a lot of people standing around discussing things and then trying to find something. Jun Fukuda tended to structure his movies around chases and stuff like that. They made two totally different movies. And that's not knocking Ishiro Honda at all. It's just a fact that I just said it. They made two different types of movies. And they just happen to be roped into the same genre in many ways. They just happen to be roped into the same genre, two different types of movies. The stuff that Ishiro Honda excelled in was like War of the Gargantuas, or the story of War of the Gargantuas, since he had a big hand in the story at least, even though I can't really call that an Ishiro Honda movie. That was more of an Eiji Tsuburaya movie. But it was Ishiro Honda's hand in the script that I think that's why the story and the characters of the monster are as good as they are. But Frankenstein Conquers the World, Matango, the H-Man and stuff like that. If you want to see more of Ishiro Honda's style, watch those movies. Don't watch his giant monster movies, because he's having to pull so much double duty with Eiji Tsuburaya. It's important that we put Ishiro Honda where he should be, which is... we have to give him credit for what he actually did, not the entire thing himself. And that's not knocking Ishiro Honda, because what he did was just phenomenal, just utterly phenomenal. But I'm pointing this out because David Callett made me think about it when I was listening to one of his audio commentators. I'm like, yeah, you're right. But if you watch like Matango, the H-Man, What's another one? The Human Vapor. That was the other one I was trying to think of. The Human Vapor. Those movies, you tend to get a better feeling of what type of movie Ishiro Honda liked making, or his style, because those movies relied a lot more on his influence than, we'll say, a Godzilla movie, where a lot of times it was just, here's the human scenes, and here's the giant monster movie, and here's the humans reacting to said giant monster. While in those movies, we have a lot of intercutting with the special effects and stuff like that. And this is in no way knocking those Godzilla movies. I mean, fucking love Mothra versus Godzilla to no end, and I love most of those movies. Actually, who am I kidding? I love them all. But if you want to know Ishiro Honda style, watch the H-Man, Matango, and the Human Vapor. Those are the ones that you want. Now contrast that with Jun Fukuda, who made like 100 Shot, 100 Kills, which is a ludicrous movie, unbelievably entertaining in every way, shape, and form. His movies, he made comedies, he made action films, greatly in contrast to Ishiro Honda, because Ishiro Honda was being roped to be basically like Mikio Naruse, or somebody like that. He was making woman-centric character films more than he was making science fiction films. But he got roped into science fiction films because he was good at making science fiction films, the best at making these science fiction films. And the studio is what roped him into that more than anything else. He was just a cog in the machine, similar to Jun Fukuda. But Jun Fukuda just discovered that he liked making these action-packed movies. He liked making comedies. And even he wound up getting roped into making these science fiction movies, especially in the 70s. And he hated those movies up to his dying day. It literally was towards the end of his life that he finally reconciled, yeah, I guess these movies are okay. I guess, begrudgingly. And it took him having open heart surgery and him receiving thousands of letters from fans across the globe wishing him well for him to realize just how impactful those movies were for a lot of them. And it's kind of tragic, where unlike Ishiro Honda, where he got bored with making giant monster movies in Godzilla, he never was ashamed of the fact that he made those movies at all, or he never viewed them as bad movies. Then that's one of the things that I really love about Honda, is that no matter what he was making, no matter what he was doing, he approached it so seriously, and in the same way he approached each job as if he had to prove something. He was going to make it to the best of his ability. He wasn't going to phone it in. Contrast that again with Jun Fukuda. You look at Godzilla vs. Megalon, and man, is that a phoned in movie. The live action portions of that stuff, that is a phoned in movie, which is in great contrast to the movie he would make the next following year, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, which is full of life and energy, and again, far more like a Jun Fukuda movie. Because, like, if you look at Godzilla vs. Megalon to Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, it's almost like they were made by two different filmmakers, but they weren't. They were both made by Jun Fukuda. And I'm like, that's insane to me, and you can just see the level of enthusiasm compared to one versus the other.